Hi everyone. Today's lesson is to determine if lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Just a quick review. These lines are parallel. Their equations are y equals 2x for the bottom one and y equals 2x plus 3 for the top. Do you notice any similarities between their equations? These lines are perpendicular. They meet to form a right angle. The line to the left, the equation is 7x plus 3y equals 12, or in slope-intercept form, y equals negative 7/3 x plus 4. The lower line over here is y equals 3/7 x. Again, take a look at them, see if you notice any similarities between the two equations, particularly when this one is in slope-intercept form. Parallel lines are always the same distance apart. They do not intersect. Non-vertical lines are parallel if they have the same slope and different y-intercepts. Vertical lines are always parallel. Can anyone guess why? The reason vertical lines are parallel is because they always have the same slope. Perpendicular lines are lines that form right angles. Two lines are perpendicular if the product of their slopes is -1. So in other words, you're going to take the slope from one equation, multiply it with the slope from the other equation, and if it equals -1, the lines will intersect perpendicularly. A vertical and a horizontal line are perpendicular. Find the slope of a line perpendicular to the equation. Here's the equation. The first thing we're going to take, or the only thing we need to take in this question, is the slope part. And the slope on this one is -2/3. Now we need to think what number times -2/3, and I replace that with the variable g, is going to be equal to -1. Because remember, the product of the slopes of the two lines has to equal -1 if they're going to be perpendicular. Now you can solve this like a regular equation, and you're going to divide both sides by -2/3. Remember, this line means divide, even though it makes it look like a fraction. And when we divide by a fraction, this is the same thing as above. I just wrote it out differently for you to hopefully recognize it a little bit easier. When we divide by a fraction, we actually end up multiplying by the reciprocal. So in this case, it becomes -1 times -3/2. Remember your rules for integers. A -1 times a -3/2 is going to give us a positive answer. So our slope is going to be 3/2. And that's all you have to do on this. Now, if you go back to the original equation, where it has y equals -2/3 x plus 4, if you can remember that it's actually the opposite inverse, the reciprocal, that's going to give you the slope, you can jump from this step and think in your head, okay, it's going to be positive, because it has to be opposite, to equal -1, 3/2, and just flip it. So you can bypass all this work if you can think that in your head. Find the slope of the line parallel to the equation 3x minus 2y equals 1. In this case, it's a little hard to figure out the slope in this format, which is standard form. So let's change this into, take a guess, slope-intercept form. Let's move the 3x over to the right. So we have -2y equals -3x plus 1. Our next step would be to get y by itself. So we need to divide each side by -2. When we do that, on the left side we get y, and on the right Remember, we have to take that negative 2 and divide it into both parts because there's a plus sign here. So we get negative 3x divided by negative 2 plus 1 divided by negative 2. Let's write this a little bit cleaner. And we have a negative over a negative becomes a positive, so we end up with 3/2 x. And instead of plus a negative fraction, we're just going to say minus 1/2. So now we can very easily find our slope. And our slope on this one is going to be 3/2. The question, if we go back to it, asks for the slope of the line parallel to it. Parallel lines have the same slope, so your answer is simply going to be 3/2. You don't need to write an equation for this one. It doesn't ask for it. It just asks you to find the slope. And since it's parallel, the slope has to be the same. Write an equation for a line that goes through point 2, -1 and is parallel to the line y equals -1/2 x plus 3. Again, it doesn't say what format we have to put our equation in, so keep that in mind. This is in slope-intercept form, so we know that our slope is -1/2. If the line is parallel, our slope is also going to be -1/2. Now, because it doesn't say what format to use, but it does give us a point, and now we know what the slope has to be, the easiest equation form to use is going to be your point slope. All you need to do is substitute in the point that was given, which was 2, -1 for your x and your y, and put our new slope, which happens to be the same because they're parallel, in for m. And then for your last step, you just want to clean up that y minus -1 and change it to y plus 1 equals -1/2 times the quantity x minus 2. Keep it simple. Don't make more work for yourself. If it doesn't say or stipulate exactly what form you need to be in, pick the easiest one. Keep it simple. Write an equation for the line that goes through the point 2, -1 and is perpendicular to the line y equals -1/2 x plus 3. A little bit more work on this one, but not too bad. In order for it to be a perpendicular line, we need to find a number that multiplied by -1/2 is going to equal -1. So just as we did before, I'm going to substitute in the x for g, so you know we're not really looking for x, we're just looking for the new slope. And we have -1/2 times some number has to equal -1. We're going to divide each side by -1/2. I've rewritten it for you so it's a little easier for you to follow. On the left, we get g equals -1 divided by -1/2. When we divide by a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal, and we end up with -1 times -2, which is 2. Okay, so our slope for the perpendicular line is going to be 2. Again, if you can jump from finding the slope here and saying, okay, if I multiply by 2, I'm going to end up with -1. That's my slope for the new line. You don't have to do all this work. If you don't see it automatically, though, these are the steps you're going to follow. Okay, now we've already decided this is the same problem. Our slope is 2. Again, it doesn't say what format we have to use, so keep it simple. Use your point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times the quantity x minus x1. Again, we know the new slope. Substitute it in. M is 2. Use the point that was given to you. Here's your y1, -1, and your x was 2. And again, we just want to clean up that minus and negative and write it as y plus 1 equals 2 times the quantity x minus 2. And you're done. Okay, it doesn't stipulate what form to use, so use the one that's easiest for you.